This is the BBC.
Dear brothers and sisters, all are welcome here at the Confessions podcast, whether saint or sinner.
Ad-libs prepared.
Ad-libs prepared.
Yeah.
Well, hi everybody, and welcome to another Confessions podcast from your friends right here at BBC Radio 2, where every day is a Christmas day.
88 to 91 FM.
Aha!
BBC Radio 2.
How about that?
I'm so happy we're doing that still.
Have you got the jazz jingle?
What do you want a jazz jingle for?
It's for a change.
You can't do requests.
Can't we?
Okay, what is it called?
I don't know. Radio 2 Jazz. Yeah.
Jazz.
Oh, I don't know. It almost certainly isn't. It's probably called Radio 2 Pop Smack or something like that.
That's a game, isn't it?
Probably. Let's market it now. Tonight on this podcast thing, which we've managed to do for you, all the best of the confession. So can't stop this thing we Star Wars'd. I still think that's quite good.
Really?
Yes.
Do you?
Brian's Tale, One Way or a Brother. Fanula's Confession. I'm Up All Night to Get Clucky.
That's definitely the one of the week, that. Yeah.
And a classic confession from the crypt featuring a wardrobe malfunction. But we start with Carol's confession. The swimmer fakes it all. The swimmer fakes it all. It's that one, by the way.
Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast. Please be seated.
Father Simon and the Collective. This shameful event, requiring your prodigious pardon, came about as a result of a special celebration last summer. It all started with an invitation to a big birthday do. It was a celebration, one ending in a zero, shall we say, of a very old, and by that I mean long-standing friend, who shall henceforth be known as Julie. Julie decided that she would like to share the special day with a very select group of her most trusted pals in the luxurious setting of a Somerset spa hotel. Janie, a taxi driver, Helen, an admin assistant, Angie, an optician, and me, Carol, a teacher. The plan was to join Julie on the morning of her birthday, have lunch together, and then spend the afternoon relaxing by the pool in preparation for the main event in the evening, where we would have a gourmet birthday dinner together in the smart hotel restaurant. I was a little apprehensive on arrival, as I had only briefly met Janie and Angie once before, never met Helen, but we're all from different parts of the country, all with different backgrounds, different interests. However, I was sure that as we were all mutual friends of Julie's, we'd hit it off, and we did. We had a thoroughly enjoyable lunch and a relaxing afternoon, getting to know each other. Late afternoon, we agreed to retire to our respective rooms to change and freshen up, and we'd agreed to meet in Julie's room before dinner. I'd packed a bottle of Prosecco and planned to share it as an aperitif. When we all met again, suited and booted in Julie's room, I produced my bottle of Prosecco. It turned out I wasn't the only one who'd thought of this. Everyone had had precisely the same idea. Corks popped, and we spent a jolly hour or so toasting the birthday girl and watching her open various gifts and cards. By now, I think this is the phrase, we were all getting along famously.
Yeah,
I think this has been de-alcoholized. And it didn't feel like we'd only just met. There was great hilarity when birthday girl Julie produced a gift for each of us to mark the occasion, matching swimming caps. The heavy rubber old-fashioned kind, studded with multicoloured flowers. We were touched by her generosity and tried them on. We would certainly have an opportunity to wear them tomorrow in the fabulous spa pool. When it's time to go down to dinner, I carefully collected the extravagant caps and put them in a carrier bag for safekeeping. By the time we arrived in the restaurant for dinner, we were the very, very best of friends. By now, we were such extraordinary friends. It felt as though we'd known each other forever. We ordered a couple of bottles of wine to wash the food down, and the conversation was flowing freely. Angie had organised a beautiful birthday cake, and when it arrived, I asked the waiter to take a snap of us all with the birthday girl and the cake. In anticipation of a big tip, he obliged, and we posed variously while he took lots of pictures with everyone's phones. When he left to attend to another table, I remembered I had a bag full of swimming caps, and it seemed like a hilarious idea to have a photograph of us all wearing our swimming caps with the cake. Now, this is where it all started to go downhill. Thanks to all the refreshments that we'd had, it was easy to persuade the others to put on their swimming caps for a photograph, but the waiter seemed to have made himself scarce. Through tears of hilarity, I cast my eyes around the restaurant for someone to take a picture of us all in our fine headgear, and I met the open-mouthed gaze of an elderly lady at the next table to us. In my slightly befuddled state, I felt the need to explain why we were wearing the swimming caps. Now, Simon, in a charming Geordie accent, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, great. Here
No.
it comes, everyone.
No,
Yes.
I don't...
Oh,
Really?
it would be patronising.
Oh, right.
really?
Yes, I think it would. Okay,
Somewhat disappointing.
okay. Would you mind, I asked politely, offering her my camera... Don't be too disappointed. It's only 3 words. Would you mind, I asked politely, offering her my camera phone? You see, we were a synchronised swimming team back in the day, winners of many medals at the Olympics. This is our reunion to celebrate Julie's big day. The older lady and her 2 friends were very impressed and delighted to help out, and they took photos of us as a group and individually. We regaled them with tall tales about our exploits in the synchronised swimming arena, and the spectacular routines and stories of costumes and events became ever more detailed, to our own great amusement. The old ladies even began to remember seeing us on television at the height of our fame. So they were confused, and so were we. Anyway, we decided to retire to the large hotel lounge bar for coffee and digestives. Is that how you say it?
Digestif.
Digestive.
Digestif.
It's a biscuit.
Well, I don't think it's a chocolate digestive. I think it's a small alcoholic beverage.
Oh, there's a shock.
I think, Carol, you'd had enough at
Yes.
this point. Anyway, the old ladies, enthralled to our tales, decided to join us. The tales of our synchronised swimming success overwhelmed me, and I couldn't resist. As we entered the lounge area, all still wearing the flowered swimming caps, I said, "We could show you the old routine if you like."
Oh, dear.
I laid down on the smart parquet floor
What?
in what I assumed was a suitable in-water pose when doing synchronised swimming, and my fellow behatted friends followed suit. In classic formation style, we proceeded to go through a simulated version of our former skills in the pool, but on the carpet. Legs, arms, backs, everything in the air. It was coordinated, it was beautiful. The old ladies were enthralled and proceeded to take numerous photographs of us in different poses, with our camera phones and with their own. Finally, tired and emotional, we said goodnight to our admirers amid cries of, "See you in the pool in the morning," from the older ladies. 7 a.m, I called back in my strong Geordie accent. "We'll do the winning routine for old time's sake." The next morning, 7 o'clock, came and went. None of us was in any condition to be in the pool, having had a late night and feeling surprisingly unwell. So we all stayed in bed. No forgiveness is required from Julie, who had a lovely birthday, nor from my new mates, or even from the waiter. But I do need to ask forgiveness from the ladies at the next table, who were undoubtedly sitting by the pool, cameras at the ready at 7 a.m, patiently waiting for the famous synchronised swimming team from an unspecified Olympics back in the day, who never ever arrived. What a spectacle that was on the hotel floor, with this incredible bunch of women with hats on, recreating their Olympic glory, or whatever it was. Sister Bobby.
I wonder what their Olympic name or their team name was. You know, Legs Akimbo or something like that. It's fantastic.
Do they all have names like that?
Well, I think the team has a name, doesn't it? It's not just the country. They have an aesthetic name, you know, to describe what they are. You know, like the Bathing Bells or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Matt will know.
The
It's
Tunbridge
sport.
Wells Tornadoes.
Well,
Come
it's
on.
in sport. That's the
I don't think they
question.
do have
Don't
a
they?
name.
Surely
no.
have they team names?
Well, they have their own
Great
name.
Britain.
Great Britain.
Oh,
or
okay. Yeah, I know
France.
that in the Olympics, but before they get to
Anyway.
that stage,
Okay, when
they
they're
have
doing it in not in the Olympics, then yes, they have a name.
I
yes.
love this, Carol. Yeah, there is nothing to be forgiven. I think even the old ladies, it didn't matter if it was true or not. It was fabulously entertaining, and also you included them, and it was enjoyable, and everyone had a fantastic night. And I love those swimming hats. I have to say, I spent some time looking for some myself, because after wanting to go to the swimming pool to fix my back, I thought it'd be quite funny if I turned up with one of those hats on that people
I'd
could
like
laugh
one as
at me.
well. I'm going to wear one tomorrow.
So, Carol, nothing to be forgiven. You are utterly forgiven, and please, can you come to my next birthday?
Brother Matthew.
So, from what I know of synchronised swimming, by the way, I think it's done in twos. I don't think there's ever groups of them in the Olympics. I think
there
that
are
when
teams.
No,
There
there are
are
teams.
teams.
Really?
Yes, come on, get
in
with
the
groove.
Olympics.
What's wrong with you?
Really?
Teams of synchronised
I've seen them in
rumours.
sort of golden age of Hollywood shows, but not
You
in...
need to get out more.
Really?
Yes.
Anyway, so I mean, I'm going to forgive here. I mean, obviously, the idea that they thought that the old women were enthralled by their moves on the floor. We all think everyone's finding us very entertaining when we've had a little bit to drink. But still, I'm definitely going to forgive. I mean, obviously, I speak for the nation when I say... Could have done with a Geordie accent, though, really. Would have helped with the story, I think so, yes.
There was a slight
Very
Geordiness,
much
I think.
dodged a bullet there. But I am going to forgive.
The Confessions Podcast.
Simon and the Collective, I'm writing to you for forgiveness because I did a terrible, 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 terrible thing. I was blessed with a fabulous husband who wanted to be a farmer, but was sadly a mere solicitor who worked in the city. Most of the week I never saw him because he frequented city wine bars and dined with clients, associates, and anyone really he could have fun with. He attended rugby, supporting his home team and taking clients, associates, and anyone really he could have fun with. That is not to say, however, I was not fun. I was then and continued to be really great fun.
I like this.
But
Very
my
good,
husband
yeah.
failed miserably to appreciate this.
Oh, dear.
As a scene-setting opening paragraph, Fanua, that's pretty darn good, I have to say. We're kind of in this relationship. We know what's happening. His altar farming ego occurred at weekends when he came home and visited poultry auctions.
Poultry or poultry?
Yes, poultry. Poultry auctions. At that time, we were also blessed with 4 children. I produced babies, as my husband produced chickens, and the chickens produced chicks.
What?
We led an idyllic life. Easter Sunday was particularly special. Baby chicks in the little hands of my husband's gorgeous progeny. Chocolate and fluffy wuffy chicks. How could I not be happy? Well, I'll tell you how I could not be happy. There were chickens everywhere, and they were pooing everywhere. I slip-slided my way to the washing line, baby on my back, baby on my front. The little feathered darlings were encouraged into my kitchen, where they left their mark. I found myself responsible for feeding and caring for 4 children under 5. That's 4 children under 5, and dozens of stinking, pooping chickens. Husband, meanwhile, continued to attend rugby matches around the world and dine out with associates and clients, all in the name of furthering his very important career.
Don't think there's many in his corner right now.
However, the worst part of the situation, yes, it could be worse, was the cockerel. Yes, the bloomin' cockerel. Just when my gorgeous children began to sleep through the night and wake at 6 a.m. instead of 3 a.m., my husband's pesky cockerel would wake me up at first light. I was sleep deprived following years of babies and very little help, but my husband's exhausting lifestyle meant that he would sleep through a screaming baby and have no idea that I'd been up all night. He would wake refreshed and cheerful, looking forward to another weekend of chicken buying and would-be farmer activities. I was getting cross and I hated my morning call. Cock-a-doodle-doo every morning, just as I nodded off from a night of baby comforting. So I asked my husband not to buy any more cockerels. I even begged him to get rid of a couple. Alas, to no avail. High-pitched bantam cockerels, low-pitched Orpington cockerels. We had 4 cockerels all going for it at once at 4 a.m. and he snored through it all. The Sumatra cockerel even attacked me as I fed it. Such an ungrateful bird. I nursed my wounds, protected my toddlers, and chased it with a stick, looking like a crazy woman. Which I thought it probably came quite easy to know that at this time. After months of this torture, I decided on desperate measures. I woke at 4 a.m. one morning, and leaving my sleeping babies and snoring husband, I jumped out of bed in a rage and headed for the chicken house, with a cat carrier under my arm. Still wearing my pyjamas, I marched up to the chickens, grabbed all 4 of them, bundling them into the carrier, put them in the back of my car, and headed to the next village. Some friends in this anonymous village had not sympathised with my complaints, even though next door to them were a couple who owned a handful of hens. So it seemed this would be a fitting destination, and I drove there with no thought but to offload these sleep-depriving critters into the neighbour's hen pen. Parked on the road and marched confidently into my unsympathetic friend's garden, stepping over the low wall into their neighbour's plot and placing all 4 cockerels into the aforementioned hen pen. I then left quickly in my car, drove home, climbed into bed without the cockerels, and slept blissfully until my husband woke at 9 a.m. He put on his would-be farmer cap, brought me tea in bed and headed out to his birds. I lay in bed, sipped my tea and smiled. My husband soon marched back in as he couldn't find his testosterone-fueled cockerels, most particularly his prized Sumatran. I calmly suggested that the dreaded fox might be responsible, and he seemed to accept this explanation, although he was surprised by the lack of feathers. He then suggested he might need to go to another poultry auction to buy replacements. I calmly suggested that if another cockadoodle-doo arrived in our house, it would be cockadoodle dead in no time at all. Great. My husband might have suspected foul play at this moment, just getting that in before everyone does on the verdicts, but looked at me sipping my tea and wearing my pyjamas and knew that I'd just woken up, so it couldn't possibly have been my doing. I smiled sweetly at him as he completely failed to notice the mud on my pyjama bottoms. I, of course, continued to deny all knowledge, and I think it barely crossed his mind that I could do such a dastardly deed. My unsympathetic friends, however, couldn't understand how 4 noisy cockerels had ended up next door in the hen pen. In fact, the entire village was chatting for weeks about the mystery of the intrusive but unknown cockerels in the hen pen. Father Simon, I need merely forgiveness from the poor birds themselves for the fact that I grabbed them in mid-cockadoodle-doo by their legs, tore off to the next village at speed. It wasn't their fault. I am slightly ashamed. However, that said, I never want to see or hear them again. Now, what Fionnuala doesn't provide is any information about the future of husbands.
Yes. You'd think not.
Because, you know, you wouldn't be surprised if you picked the husband up and put him in the hen pen in the neighbouring village. Anyway, Fionnuala, thank you very much indeed for tonight's tale. Jules, how are you feeling about that one?
Do you know, I was really worried when he started the story because I thought it was going to end up in a chicken nuggets scenario.
Oh, I see. No, I don't.
And I couldn't have ever forgiven that.
That wouldn't have made it through, I don't
That wouldn't
think.
have made it through.
No.
I'm not understanding even why this is a question of forgiveness. Undoubtedly, absolutely she's forgiven because, well, actually, my husband's a bit of a farmer in his spare time as well. He's never done the cockerel thing, but I would, you know, have the same reaction if he did.
Right.
And also...
Does he put on a cap at weekends?
And some wellies, yeah, and all that.
Pretend to be a farmer.
Yeah.
Let's go to a chicken's auction.
Let's not.
He's never done the poultry thing. That's not good. But the cockerels, I don't think there's any forgiveness needed there. They've ended up with a load of hens. What better place for cockerels to be? And she also sorted out the miserable friends who didn't have any sympathy. So, Fionnuala, you are completely and utterly forgiven in my book.
Forgiveness for Fionnuala. What do you say there, brother?
Well,
Matthew?
here I've got a couple of thoughts here. Number one is, who's letting the chickens into the kitchen? Surely there's a chicken run. I mean, little that I do know about poultry farming, but don't you have a chicken run where you keep the chickens? How are the chickens getting out of the chicken run and getting into your kitchen? Makes no sense. Number two, do you need more than one cockerel? Every cartoon I've ever seen, there's only one cockerel there, and he tends to do the cock-a-doodle-doo thing, and then that's it, and everyone else just gets on with their lives. Number two, number three, I'm losing count. Number four, why do we need, if we have all these cockerels, why can't we train these cockerels to be quiet at daybreak? If we can put a man on the moon, why haven't we managed to keep a cockerel stum when the sun rises? So I am going to forgive.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
That was Fionnuala's confession. I'm up all night to get Clucky, featuring Jules there, who was in for Bobby on Monday. Now, if you're otherwise engaged with very important matters when Fionnuala's confession went out on air, like Faye, for example, who's a member of cabin crew and simply can't take a break and listen up at 38,000 feet for understandable reasons, you'd have missed the reaction on the people's verdict. So for you guys with the important jobs, here's one of our favourite responses. Dear Simon, it's at times like these I wonder, what would Foghorn Leghorn do? That's Adrian. And also, what would Barbara Good from The Good Life do? Still to come, the confession that it seemed Matt was a big fan of.
Any confession that involves someone being drenched by a blind man's bottom was always going to be a big winner with me. Yes.
So now everyone's going to hang around and work out.
You're going to be sorely disappointed.
What a blind man's bottom is going to be doing, featuring one of the confessions. Anyway, before then, we have to hop over and see what new bits and pieces have appeared on the parish notice board over there.
Oh, there it is.
Yes, made out of cardboard. It's looking slightly less snowy, obviously, and a little bit saggy. So, Matt, what has caught your eye from this particular section?
We have got an email from Davy who says, "Hello, everyone.
Hi, Davy.
Hi, Davy. My wife recently had a birthday, and as this approached, she hinted for an MP3 player. Much to her surprise, our 12-year-old son got her one for her birthday.
Wow, how about
Result! Unfortunately, my wife isn't the best when it comes to IT equipment, so I offered to set things up so she could download all her favourite music. I also seized the opportunity to subscribe her to the best podcast in the world.
Of course you did.
That is ours, obviously, just in case you're wondering. Here is the photographic evidence.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I know you've run out of stickers, but don't worry. I'll be happy to take anything you can pinch from other inferior programmes. Surely not. Or as you often suggest, just send money. A Steve Cram high five to your underling. What?
Well,
a Steve Cram high five to your underlings?
That's you
We all
guys.
know how this is going to go.
Well, let's see what we can send you in a moment. But it was an interesting suggestion. But first, do you have something lovely to share with us, Bobby?
I certainly do. And think back to the historical confession last week, because Andy from Liverpool emailed in to say, "Dear Father Simon, the conveyor of posthumous pardon, and Sister Bobby.
Yes.
Thank you for reading out my confession last week. For those who missed it, it was the wails of the unexpected, the confession from the past. I was so surprised," says Andy. "You must get thousands of confessions." We do, and was rather taken that you could choose mine. As a token of thanks, I thought you might like to hear some follow-up.
Oh, this is good.
Go on.
Being the man of the cloth you are, Father Simon, you will know that all Anglican services have a time of confession in them, and I'm always looking for new and creative ways to do this. So having had my confession read out last week, and with the news that one of your parishioners was using the Confessions podcast whilst doing jobs in church, I felt rather inspired. So on Sunday, I actually played my confession as part of the morning service, which I was leading at Liverpool Cathedral.
Now, I don't think we
Wow.
knew that Andy was a priest,
No.
actually. So that's pretty amazing. This is the story from the 1800s, isn't it? Where a brother got locked in the bedroom so he
Yes.
couldn't propose to his beautiful intended. And the other brother stole her.
Where are we going to take if we're now getting confessions read out in church?
This is very good.
In cathedrals, no less.
I think the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Pope are
The
next
Pope.
in line.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got the whole congregation of Liverpool Cathedral listening to a confession. So if you can top that in any way, if you've played it, a confession out in public, let us know. You never know what prize possessions might be coming your way. We received a photograph also from Ewan Power, who's looking very smug in the photo because he has a drive time car sticker. And you see a reflection of him in the back window. He's got a sticker, he's got his thumbs up, and he's looking completely satisfied with life.
What car is it?
It's a Ford, is all I can tell.
Oh, okay.
You can probably tell exactly what it is and where, and the garage it was
I'll be
bought from.
so impressed, Bobby, if
No,
you
it's
can do
too
this.
new. I don't know
Oh.
new cars. Sorry.
Anything after 1943, Bobby's not got an idea about that. So more on our car sticker replacement in a bit, because there is a replacement.
There's a replacement?
Very exciting.
Oh,
it's time
yeah.
for another U-rated mini confession from Percy. Now, remember the rules of these. These have to be nursery confessions, so there's definitely primary school age. Simon, Bobby and Matt, I am 11 years old, says Percy, and I lived in England. I would still be in primary school, but I live in Germany, and they move us to secondary school one school year earlier. I hope that doesn't make me too old to join in a mini confession.
No, it
I think
doesn't.
you're fine. What happened was this. This will shock you. My dad makes us, I have a big brother and a small brother, work for our pocket money. That's okay, I suppose. But then, when I buy sweets with my pocket money, he taxes them
Oh, superb.
at 40%.
What?
Wow.
40%?
I'm not happy about this. I asked him not to. I asked him to buy his own, but he wouldn't do it. So every time that he took my sweets, I took a pair of his pants. And I hid them behind the radiator in my bedroom. After a while, he started to ask where his pants were. Then one day he got a bit cross with my mum because he had only one pair on and one in the wash. The next day I put them all back and told everyone what I'd done. Daddy was not very happy, but Mummy thought it was very funny
Yes.
and said it was all Daddy's fault. I hope Daddy learnt a lesson, but I'm sorry that Mummy got the blame and that she had to buy more pants. I hope you can forgive me. P.S. I just heard the podcast and you read out my brother Robert's email. He's very happy. If you've got something spare, now there are no more stickers, I would be very happy. Well, I think that's fantastic. First of all, though, if buy your own sweets, Dad. That's, you know, all that money you earn, that's what it's for. Don't give
40%
pocket...
seems very high.
That's the
I mean,
super high rate of tax for the wealthy.
You're forgetting one thing.
What?
what the damage to your teeth and the cost for your teeth. So taxing at 40%.
Come, Bobby,
stick
with
it in
your
the
sensible...
Back. Well,
But
no,
that's
it's true,
not why
isn't it?
he's doing it. That's not why he's doing it. He's doing it because he's greedy. That's why he's doing
So
it.
Ewan's dad is greedy.
Yes, absolutely, categorically.
And needy of pants.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Just go without your pants and be more generous. That's what I think.
That's very much the message you want to send to the public, is it?
Less pants, more sweets. Come on, kids, you know it makes sense. So, do we forgive Percy? I think we certainly do. Now, our team have been trying to find a replacement for the bumper stickers and the car stickers, and they've kindly twisted arms of other show production teams to, shall we say, donate some of their out-of-date promotional items to replace the car stickers. This week, we've strong-armed the Steve Wright team to... I know this looks like a pizza box.
Okay.
Actually, what it is a Steve Wright in the afternoon clock.
Oh, I say.
With the old Radio 2 logo. So that it's a very, very old clock, but it's still, it hasn't got a battery. You do have to supply your own battery.
So it's vintage.
Vintage, antique.
The vintage branded work. That's a
what
rare
it is.
thing.
So
yeah.
How many of these clocks have we got?
Probably just a few. I don't know. But
Okay.
we've got enough for Percy, Andy, and Davey. We're going to get a clock to you all, and maybe I'll sign it or put in a photograph or spoil it in some way.
Yes, good idea.
But it's a very nice... He was just sitting there doing nothing in Steve Wright's cupboard. So we've got some Steve Wright clocks with the old Radio 2 logo coming your way. Now, we'll only reward outstanding contributions to the podcast with some of the bits that we get donated. If you want to be in with a chance of receiving some some honest Radio 2 merchandise, get your creative hat on. Email confessions@bbc.co.uk. Okay, so now it's the bit that you pretend not to enjoy, but it's the dirty, grubby part
Oh, yes.
of the notice board. A trawl through the gutter, ladies and gentlemen, highlighting the confessions that haven't made the cut due to compliance rules on the BBC. But apparently on a podcast, no one cares.
Yeah.
Ian, your game of teasing a family's dog with a newspaper through their letterbox might have seemed like a fun way to liven up your paper round. But you teased this dog so much it took a running jump towards you and smashed through the frosted glass of its front door. Someone could have been hurt, nobody was, but you are a bad paperboy, and Bobby has got her stern face on.
Never mind somebody. What about the dog? That is...
I meant
I'm
that.
sorry.
I meant that.
I am...
I meant that.
You
I meant
just-
that. No one was
the
injured.
people, no,
Everything was
mortified.
fine.
It's-
Everything was fine. The dog was really happy about it.
Yeah.
Everyone smiled, and
Don't
they all went home.
tease the
They
dogs.
sang songs, and
Yes.
They're just dogs.
they poured themselves a drink.
They
and
can't
went,
tell you.
We're fine. I'm
They
a dog.
can't tell you how
Living in the
annoyed
meadow.
they
What
are.
the good Lord
You're not
designed me to
listening
do.
me.
Circle of life.
Just say stuff. Lauren, it's bad enough that you missed a job interview because you were hungover, but getting your friend to phone up and say you'd been in a car crash in order to justify it
Oh, no.
is shameless. Nearly as shameless as the mess you found on said friend's couch when you woke up that morning and failed to tell her about it.
Goodness me.
This is revolting, that one.
Well,
No.
it's really your loss, isn't it?
Who?
Because you didn't
Mine?
go for the job interview, not yours. Because
Oh,
you
the
didn't go.
sofa's loss.
So, who really loses here?
The sofa?
Definitely.
All that mess?
Mr. Muller has sent an incredible tale that involved him being unable to afford a certain cream for a certain rash. That
Is he the rice man? The rice yogurt man?
I don't think it's that, Mr. Muller.
He's got a
Anyway,
big bear.
he'd been unable to afford a certain cream for a certain rash that he'd carelessly picked up.
Bobby. With you.
Oh, Mr. Muller.
He just said the rash bit for his... whatever.
Anyway, this is Mr. Muller.
With the rice
Bears have...
on his...
You can't put rice on it.
Don't put rice on it, Bobby.
That would be wrong. So wrong in a number of ways.
I was thinking about Mr. Muller, the bear.
Yeah, the bear?
Not the Hofmeister bear.
Oh,
the
right.
Muller yogurt bear.
Muller?
And also rice pudding bear.
Why is he putting rice? You're
Anyway, a
not my
long time
GP.
ago, Mr. Muller sent us an incredible tale that involved him being unable to afford a certain cream for a certain rash that he'd carelessly picked up. I can't remember why. Mr. Muller's solution to this problem was decanting yogurt into a mug and putting a certain part of his body into the mug to ease the itching.
Unbelievable.
I think he's talking about his ear or hand.
Unbelievable.
And did he then throw the mug out? Of course not. Instead, Mr. Muller let his housemate, who owed him £120 and was, in Mr. Muller's eyes, the reason he couldn't afford to buy the necessary creams, eat the leftover yogurt out of the mug, where hours before,
Yes, no, we got that.
The dipping.
Goodness.
Was it live yogurt?
Didn't need the word dipping.
It wasn't afterwards, I don't think, no.
Is it live yogurt?
Well, it's ineffective if it's not live.
Is it against that, is it really?
I'm not eating that if it's ineffective.
I'm not dipping anything until I know whether that's live.
Just to be clear, none of these are okay. But send your confessions anyway, and, we'll have a laugh. Confessions@bbc.co.uk. Anyway, enough fun.
Yes, quite right. Come on.
Back to the confessions, where we revisit Dr. Simon G's confession, "Can't stop this thing we Star Wars'd."
Oh, dear.
The confession that prompted this people's verdict. Jeff in Oxford. See if I can do this. Forgiven he is.
No.
Hearing it played back now, I can realise that maybe it didn't sound a lot like Yoda.
Yeah, but you tried.
I did try. I made an effort. Thank you very much indeed.
The Confessions Podcast.
Father Simon and the Jedi Council of Forgiveness.
Oh, best yet.
Following the confession by the guy who went to see the midnight showing of The Last Jedi when he should have been with his pregnant wife. This is from a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
It was a corker. I've been inspired to confess my own Star Wars-related saga. This goes back to the year 1999, a year any Star Wars fan will remember well and perhaps even try to forget. At the time, I was working in Los Angeles as a landscape architect and botanist, both teaching and practicing. My work took me all over the States, but the main focus was California. As well as designing landscapes, parks and public open spaces, I was also very fortunate to work with A-list celebrities,
Here we go.
designing the external environment of their properties. One of my clients was a film producer, and following a successful presentation to him one day, we were just finishing a celebratory lunch when he asked if I would like tickets to the LA premiere of Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. Now, at this point, Father Simon, you need to understand how much of a Star Wars fan I am. I was 10 years old when my parents took my brother and I to see the original film at the Dominion Theatre in Tottenham Court Road, London. I sat down with a small box of popcorn in my hands, and then it started. The sound of the Imperial Star Destroyer travelling right over my head, chasing a cruiser with Princess Leia and the Death Star plans on board. And I was hooked from that very moment. And I didn't move an inch for the whole film. In fact, when the movie finished, I still had the small box of popcorn in my hands. My mouth was wide open. I hadn't eaten a thing. Now, 40 years on, I am still just as psyched to see the new films, so you can imagine my excitement when I was offered tickets to see the premiere of the first new Star Wars film in 16 years. I was told that the event was black tie. Then it was further explained to me that all the cast and so will be there on the red carpet with the press and all the pomp and the ceremony. Wow. Father Simon, my excitement just went into the stratosphere. Not only would I be seeing the film, but also I might have the opportunity to see Liam Neeson, Samuel L. Jackson, Natalie Portman and everyone, although probably from a distance. The following day, a limo was sent to pick me up from my hotel, and as I sat in the car with a massive grin on my face, I could barely contain myself. The limo then entered a queue of other stretch limos, and up ahead I could see people getting out. The flashes from the press cameras went berserk, and spotting a couple of the big names, I shouted out in the car with excitement. I could add at this point that I was there as well with a bunch of competition winners, but
Yes.
I don't think that's relevant to the actual story, but I was there.
You were there, yeah.
However, my excitement soon turned to worry when it dawned on me that my driver was taking me to the red carpet to be dropped off, and not the alternative door for non-celebs that I'd been instructed to go to. I tried to get the attention of the driver, pressing every button I could see, but nothing was happening. By the time I finally got his attention, it was too late. The car had pulled up by the red carpet, so I had a dilemma. Father Simon, I knew what I did next was wrong, but in my defence, I simply got swept along with excitement. I got out and I smiled and I waved. Hi! Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Hi. It was like a scene from Austin Powers, smiling, waving, pointing at people as if I knew them. That's a great trick. Well done. I was getting away with it too until the worst thing happened. An attractive young lady smiled at me. Just as I was working out how to start up a conversation, she thrust a microphone in my face and began to ask questions about the film. Hi, Jane Thompson, CNN. How was the film? What was it like working with you and McGregor?
don't.
And you wouldn't do a Geordie last
No.
night, but you're happy with that, are you?
Whatever it- I don't-
Okay.
Was that you and Gregor?
Well, that's the way the Americans would say it, you see. That was very clever of me, I think.
Yes, it was.
The thing I should say is that Ewan McGregor was actually standing a few metres away from me while this question was being shouted at me. I'm not sure if she thought I was someone else, but I managed to fumble through an answer before moving on. Unfortunately, another microphone was then pushed into my face, and another barrage of questions, this time about Samuel L. Jackson. Well, I just had to make up stuff. Yes, he's a fantastic guy, a great help to me always, and an inspiration on set. That's the gist of what I was saying. What a guy, you gotta love Big Sam, I said, and then walked away. I don't know if you can call Samuel L. Jackson Big Sam, but I did it anyway. Not wanting to be accosted again, I made a direct route to the door. But unfortunately, the US press have a ninja-like skill for appearing from nowhere. And before I knew it, yet another microphone was pushed in my face. Yeah, hi, I'm happy to be here still. Despite my initial reluctance in my head, I was now an old pro at this. But just as I started to get into a yarn about me being one of the Naboo fighter pilots, and how exciting it was being part of a bigger team, and how really, if you know your Star Wars, the amphibian Gungans were the real stars. Gotta love a big Gungan.
Gotta.
Caught the eye of the officials. They were pointing in my direction. They had a look that said, "Who the heck is that guy?" Which I took as my cue to make a hasty exit towards the doors and rush inside to my seat. I think I only signed half a dozen autographs on the way, and I believe I wrote, "May the Force be with you always," and then an illegible scribble. So it could have been Ewan McGregor,
Yeah.
or it could have been Samuel L. Jackson. Who knows who it could have been? Could have been R2-D2. Who knows? I'll confess that the feeling of being rumbled at any time meant that I couldn't really appreciate the next 136 minutes. And when it was finally time to leave this event, I made sure to use the correct door. I'm not sure my nerves could have gone through all that again. I don't even remember being upset by Jar Jar Binks. Wow, imagine that.
Yeah.
You're the only one there, Dr. Simon. I would like to beg forgiveness, not to the press as, let's face it, they're a bunch of Muppets, nor to the
Okay.
nor to the producer that gave me the tickets, as he was none the wiser, but I do seek forgiveness from the genuine movie stars of the show for stealing some of the limelight whilst making others believe that I was part of the movie. It wasn't something that I set out to do, but simply a die-hard Star Wars fan that got carried away with all the excitement of the evening. I stand before you all and wait to see if I have to fall on the lightsaber of shame. Thank you, Dr. Simon G. A genuine issue. There you are. You dropped at the red carpet. Do you bustle round in embarrassment, or do you just claim to be someone super famous? Sister Bobby.
It's well, I think there just must be the luckiest Star Wars fan out there, Dr. Simon. So well done. I'm really pleased for you, actually. That is rather lovely. The things about the red carpet is they divide it in two. So you've got a kind of two lanes. You've got the insignificant lane,
Do
and
they?
then you've got they divide into two. So it's
Wouldn't
very
know.
easy to go in the wrong lane. So that's not your fault. And also, basically, the limos were in traffic, and you just have to keep moving. So you didn't really have a choice.
You know a lot about
I've
this.
stood on that red carpet. Yeah, it's scary. Anyway, but the other thing is you had no choice but to do this. It's the only way. And also, all the press would have been going for the stars, so you'd have been the warm-up. So I think you actually fulfilled a service to train up all the journalists to be on it. And let's face it, all the journalists and presenters that were there needed to be on it and know who they were talking to.
Bunch
So
of
it's fun.
Muppets.
I think nothing lost, and well done. And I hope you just had the best time ever.
Jane Thompson at CNN did actually sound like that. That was a
Really?
pretty good impression.
No.
Anyway, Novice, what do you make of all that?
Well, having been through a very similar dilemma myself before, halfway through an interview with an Australian film company, I realised that they thought I was a very famous chef, which of course I am.
You
but as in Jason Atherton. And I know Jason very well, so I thought, well, let's carry on and just do it as him. So I did.
So you pretended to be Jason Atherton all the way through?
And and then it was filmed in Australia, and a friend of Jason said, you were on telly last night, you were very good, but it wasn't you. And he said,
And it was a rubbish shirt you were
and I
wearing
had
as well.
confessed to Jason Atherton I'd done it, and he said, no, someone else normally does my interviews, so it was very good. So in this case, Dr. Simon, for that very reason, absolutely forgiven, improvised brilliantly.
Right. Brother Matthew.
I have been one of those bunch of muppets as to having to do the interviews on the red carpet, and frankly, you're just happy when anyone stops. When any of them stop, you're talking to I don't care who you are. They're brilliant. What do you think of the film? Great. What was it like working on the film? Great. Lovely. Next. So that's the reason why you got stopped. So actually, no one loses out on this at all. And frankly, if we all remember that film, that was probably the highlight of your evening, because it
wasn't great.
No taxation of trade routes, no thanks.
This is the place where penitents seek our pardon for their sins. Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
Dear Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Bobby, back in the 60s, I lived way out in the sticks along a single-track country lane. The nearest village was just over a mile away, as was the bus to the nearest town. You can imagine that for a 17-year-old, it was imperative to learn to drive as soon as possible in order to seek some kind of escape from this remote location. I was therefore delighted when I passed my test 3 months after my birthday and had wheels to use, an old car that my father had bought me for me to learn on, and that cost a princely sum of 20 quid.
Wow.
I have an older brother, Johnny, who at that time was at university in Oxford, but hadn't learned to drive before he went away. Being the kind of person he is, Johnny took it upon himself to be taught by a professional driving school as soon as he'd heard that I was learning. You see, Johnny was considered by many to be the genius of the family and had many admirers, including all the local school teachers who had taught him. Therefore, his little brother potentially having one over on him was just unthinkable. On the day in question, Johnny was at home for the summer holidays when my piano teacher, Miss Haddingham, arrived to give me some tuition before my next grade exam. She had long been enamoured with my brother and waxed lyrical to me about what a good example he was and how brilliant he was at everything he touched. She also added that I would do well to follow him, but that I really needed to try an awful lot harder. She even went as far as to say that she was sure I was going to fail my upcoming exam. I mean,
Great.
With a trowel again
I'm
here.
pretty sure you're going to fail.
Thanks, teacher. Miss Haddingham, you're a real asset. Having Johnny's achievement thrust down my throat yet again irritated me, especially as his ego seemed to have grown each summer he came back home. The thought of the summer with him wanting to commandeer the car, leaving me not being able to escape, filled me with horror, as it was bound to cause friction between us. Anyway, to the piano lesson, and just as it ended, with Miss Haddingham telling me how useless I was and asking, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" The rain started to come down outside like stair rods. It was at this point that my mother helpfully suggested that I should take Miss Haddingham back to the village in my car. "Oh, I'll do that," said Johnny before I could stop him. "I want to go to the village anyway to collect my copy of New Scientist magazine."
I think that's been added. There's no way he said that.
You know, well, it's Miss Haddingham immediately said it was a delightful gesture on Johnny's part, which she would gladly accept, and my brother grabbed the keys before I had a chance to argue. Well, a man can only be pushed so far, Father Simon, so whilst Johnny and Miss Haddingham were gathering their jackets, I went out across the garden to the courtyard where the car was parked. Now, it's probably pertinent to mention at this point that there was actually a small hole in the car's passenger well that only myself and my father were aware of. I'd covered it with a small piece of carpet, so it didn't cause me any issues, but with the promise that it would be repaired when my father had time, and I'd thought no more about it until then. I went to the passenger side of the car and removed the small piece of carpet, and immediately noticed the hole, which had been the size of a golf ball, had increased in size a little. Well, I thought, let this be a lesson to you both, and proceeded to punch the area around the hole, causing a much bigger hole to appear, about the size of a small football. I then replaced the small piece of carpet which just covered it, and wandered back into the house. I heard voices as Miss Haddingham came across the garden with my brother. "Ah," she said, "I wondered where you disappeared to." "I'm just getting my bike out," I said. "Well, you really need to be doing is practicing for your exams. That's what you should be doing. You won't get anywhere by bunking off, you know. You really should learn from your brother." And with that, she climbed into the passenger seat with Johnny closing the door for her. As he got into the driver's seat, he had a supercilious grin all over his face. "Happy driving," I shouted. Johnny started the car and turned out of the yard and into the lane, going a little too fast, I thought. As the car went down the hill from our house, he was probably approaching 40 miles an hour. And by the time he noticed the danger, it was too late.
Oh, no.
You see, our lane was prone to water sitting in large puddles. And at Blind Man's Bottom...
What?
That's what it's called. At Blind Man's Bottom, after a storm, the stream flooded the road. As you may have gathered from the name, Blind Man's Bottom,
Yes.
Johnny couldn't see the floodwater as he drove down. So as he hit the water, it pushed the mat away and erupted through the floor like a geyser, all over Miss Haddingham, soaking her from top to bottom. The force of the water also flooded the engine, causing the car to stall and leaving it surrounded by about a foot of water. Poor Miss Haddingham. Poor Johnny. Both Johnny and Miss Haddingham got out and stepped into the stream, filling their boots with water right up to their ankles. At that exact moment, it just so happened that my father, who was driving in the opposite direction, came upon the scene, and from all accounts he had a job to stifle his laughter at this somewhat comical sight. Humiliated, Miss Haddingham stormed off, squelching as she went, and refused to lift from my father to take her home. My father inspected the damage to the passenger well, and it's fair to say his words were none too polite to my brother. He verbally lambasted him for driving too fast, telling Johnny that if he hadn't been driving like a lunatic, then the car wouldn't now have a hole as large as a bucket, nor would Miss Haddingham be plodding home soaked to the skin. Johnny was then banned from using the car for the entire summer. What a result. So, Father Simon, I do not request forgiveness from either my brother nor the now late departed Miss Haddingham, but instead from my father, who was forced to scrap the £20 car a few days later and buy me a new one. I have to say I enjoyed driving it immensely for the rest of the holidays, particularly whenever I went past Johnny, giving him a special brotherly wave as I went, as you can quite imagine. Well, Brian with a story from Blind Man's Bottom, but, you know, again, this may well depend where you are on the brotherly and sisterly pecking order. Elder brother, somehow, always in favour with all the teachers. Younger brother thinking, OK, I'm going to get my own back. Sister Bobby.
Oh, yeah, it's difficult, really, because... the thing is, Brian, I do understand why you're so upset, but really, Miss Haddingham, she shouldn't really have been kind of setting up the two brothers against each other. I understand encouraging each pupil to fulfil their potential, but this is really unfair. It's not very helpful, and it's just insightful for this kind of behaviour. So, in some ways, I kind of blame her.
Yes.
However, given the times, she thought she was doing the right thing and trying to encourage him. But I don't think I can forgive you. Actually, it's your father you want forgiveness from, because he invested that money in the car, and actually, you made it worse deliberately. And I can't forgive you for putting a bigger hole in the car, because it might have been a Morris Minor or something lovely. I don't know.
How can
60s.
anyone go around and just praise one brother and not the other? It just sounds like...
It's wrong. So,
I
so you're not forgiven for making your dad buy another car?
I think Miss Haddingham had it coming herself.
Yes, I completely agree. When will someone speak up for the elder brothers? They're the ones leading the way, whilst all the other siblings
This
are
elder
there
brother was a pain.
in their wake, and they're constantly moaning about how you're the eldest, and therefore everyone's looking up to you. Well, that is very much the nature of things, I think. Also, I remember when I first had my first car, that had a hole in the passenger well, and my girlfriend, soon to be my wife, she loved the fact that you could be able to see the road underneath her feet.
Did she?
Yes, no, she didn't. It didn't go down very well at all. However, I am going to forgive, just because any confession that involves someone being drenched by Blind Man's Bottom was always going to be a big winner with me.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
That was Brian's confession, one way or a brother, which prompted this reaction on the people's verdict. Mags, forgiven. I too had a super swot older sibling who went to Oxford and would lord it over me and my brother every holiday, and teachers would despair at why I wasn't more like her. Unbearable! And so on. Anyway, that was good, and that concludes this week's batch of confessions. Mind you, sibling rivalry, one of those great topics you may well like to join in. confessions@bbc.co.uk. Do you have a dark secret? I suspect you have quite a few. Anyway, that's it from this week's batch. Who did you forgive? Let us know. Send in your own, please, to the email. And as regular listeners know, this isn't the actual end, merely time for a trip down memory lane with a confession from the BBC Crypt. This week requested by Louise from London, who says, Hello, Louise. on your podcast, you're replaying classic confessions. I would really love to hear, again, the one about the woman who is water skiing and has a bikini malfunction. I laughed a lot at that one and the telling of it and would love to hear it again. So here it is. We called it, entertainingly, I think, Skiing is Believing.
The Confessions Podcast.
Dear Simon, in the formidable few, I need to share an incident from my distant past. The early 1980s, to be exact, when I was young and carefree and on holiday with a girlfriend in Magaluf. We spent the nights dancing and the days dozing, lying in the sun on the beach by the pool, and on occasion we would partake in some of the water sports that were on offer. It is one of these water adventures that I need to ask for forgiveness for. That's not too many fours next to each other. Father Simon, I was 19 years old and I have to say very thin. So tiny bikinis were the order of the day. I was so hot day to day that my friend Jess and I spent almost all of our holiday in our swimming garments. As I'm sure you can understand, we wanted to work on our tans. On the particular day in question, I was wearing a particularly tiny green and white striped bikini. One of those. Just steady.
Look at Matt's face, for goodness sake.
Are you all right with this? Are you all right?
One of those. It was
Need some water.
It was one of those that was held on by ties on each side. After a particularly long night of dancing and a morning of basking in the sun, Jess and I decided that what we needed was to cool down, so we decided to go water skiing.
Okay.
What's going to happen?
I really can't think. Now, this is something that I had never done before, Father Simon, because mainly I don't like deep water, especially the sea. But with the excitement of the holiday and too much sun, these details were forgotten. We arrived at the dock, we were shown the equipment, and after a brief lesson on how to stay standing, Jess and I hopped onto the boat and I was towed from the beach into the bay. We were soon skiing of a fashion across the water, enjoying the cooling spray which was splashing up over our heads. After a few minutes, I suddenly became very aware of where I was and what I was doing, and was instantly terrified of falling into what I realised was very, very deep water. I took a deep breath and I tightened my grip. The boat took a sudden turn, and the force of the spray increased, shooting up at me and soaking my face and neck. I closed my eyes and held on for dear life. I didn't mind the water. It felt nice to be cooled down in the sun, but I was a little shocked at the force of the spray. The boat straightened up and we resumed to a slightly lighter jet of water, which was now cooling down my legs. However, something felt different. Something wasn't right.
Oh, yes.
My bikini top was missing.
Oh, no.
So I was now topless with no free hands to cover myself up, and I had no intention of letting go and falling into the water, which I was terrified. So I continued to grip the bar, praying for the ride to finish soon. As I clung onto the bar of the tow rope, I could see Jess waving frantically at me from across the water. She had obviously noticed that I was no longer in possession of my bikini top. I refused to acknowledge her. She was so common, but she kept on shouting. She kept on waving and pointing. And then she started shouting, and I couldn't make out what it was. But from the shock on her face, it was clearly something important.
Oh, no.
Slowly, I risked taking my eyes off the water and the boat for just a second, ignoring the possibility of falling, and I looked down. And there, around my ankles, was a small piece of green and white striped material waving like a small flag. It was the bottoms of my bikini. Now, as if to emphasise this fact, as I watched and the reality dawned on me that I was now completely naked on water skis, the bikini bottom managed to untie itself completely and fly across the water behind me. Determined, however, that I was not going to drop into the water. As I mentioned, I was terrified of the deep. That's what Jess was telling me to do. She wanted me to protect my modesty. Obviously, I held firm, more afraid of the water than the embarrassment of being naked in front of the holidaying crowds on the beach on this beautiful August afternoon. Realising that I wasn't going to let go, Jess persuaded the boat driver to bring the boat into shallow water, much closer to the unsuspecting sunbathers, but in water that was shallow, where she could pass me a towel at last to cover up. So, Father Simon, I am seeking forgiveness for, obviously, causing embarrassment to my friend Jess by refusing to fall into deep water, which is what any sane person would have done, because of my irrational fear of what might be lurking beneath. I seek forgiveness from the boat driver who was forced to give me a longer ride on the water skis because I refused to let go of the bar, but most of all, forgiveness from the people on holiday in Magaluf who were subjected to an extraordinary sight, going backwards and forwards across the bay, thinking, what's going on here, and other things. Anyway, Sophie, thank you very much indeed, and you can kind of see what the issue is there, Because obviously, everyone, what would do, you just drop into the water and then fine, and that would be the end of the story. But if you have an irrational fear of the deep, you're in a problem. What do you think?
If you have an
sister?
irrational fear of the deep water, you shouldn't go water skiing.
Yeah.
Number one.
I think
Number
she'd
two,
had a lot of sun.
Yeah.
if you're wearing a really skimpy bikini, you shouldn't go water skiing.
Yes, I think she'd had a lot of sun.
Yeah, a lot of sun. I think.
And it's thirsty work that lying in the sun.
Yeah, I think Jess probably found it quite funny actually, rather than being embarrassed. And I'm sure the people on the beach really enjoyed it, as I'm sure did the boat driver.
No, I think they felt for her embarrassment and they wanted it all to finish.
I think there's not much to forgive here. Actually, I think Sophie's probably really embarrassed, but that's about it. So you're forgiven, Sophie.
We haven't done water skiing confessions. I don't think that's the first of the water skiing ones that we've had. I don't know whether that's going to be a fruitful area. Anyway, the Venerable Deadly.
It was an accident. That's all it was, and she'd have been bright red all over when she arrived back where she started. So yeah, an accident. These things happen, don't they? We said that earlier.
I like
that.
that.
These things happen. So totally forgiven.
I like the fact that she was ignoring her friend because she was so common.
Yes.
Just shouting a lot. Oh,
See,
for
at
heaven's
first,
sake.
I thought, can't you hold on to the bar with one hand and then do something with the... But, of course, you need
no,
both hands, though.
You absolutely need both hands.
Yeah.
Brother Matthew.
Yeah, this had all the makings of sort of saucy 70s sitcom, didn't it? It was sort of, oh, there goes my top. Oh, it's all a bit crazy. And frankly, having been to Magaluf, they're well used to people in the boff doing the water
you wouldn't
skiing.
want to
Pretty
water
much
ski in there.
par for the course, frankly. Far worse than that in Magaluf. I am going to... Yes.
The voice of experience,
Yes,
ladies and
indeed.
gentlemen.
We've all been there. We've
No,
all
we
been
haven't.
there. Yes, we have. Nobody, stop rolling your eyes, you lot. We've all
haven't
been
been
there.
there.
Absolutely, yes, we have. So I am going to forgive.
Simon Mayo's Confessions Podcast.
That was your confession from the crypt this week, featuring Rebecca, who's back there, and Deadly.
Deadly, yes, and a rare Deadly confession where Deadly doesn't do the voice of, or doesn't do the sound impressions
Yeah,
as well.
sound effects. He always used to just...
For no reason, he would
Yes.
just go, I'll now do the impression of a door opening.
Was he quite shocked?
Well, I think we all were, those kind of things.
It was a bit carry-on, wasn't it?
Is a little bit, yes, everything disappearing.
It was quite shocking, because normally you'd just have expected one of them, but to lose two of them is a little bit
Well, it
careless.
wasn't disappearing. It was actually quite revealing. It was quite
It
appearing.
also was.
It was quite a lot of
was.
appearing,
But
from what
imagine
I
how
remember.
scared you would have to be of the deep to actually go, it's fine. I would rather parade myself than go into the sea.
But you see, she was very slim and tanned at the time, so I think that has some impact on that decision.
You mean she was showing off?
No, I'm saying she was
Hello?
quite happily.
Do we have to have our arms out like that when we're doing the parade? I'm
Are
parading.
you're saying that she was
No,
enjoying it?
I'm saying there are worse times that they could catch you.
Yes, I can think of at least one.
If they caught you when you were 20,
When I was... Oh, right.
it would
yes.
be better than now.
Age. Yes. No, we're... Well, yes.
Anyway.
Oh, yes.
Sister Bobby forgave 2 this week, and you're only here for 3 of them. So you're a pushover. Anyway, 20.5 forgives, 16.5 not forgives. Matt forgave everyone again.
Yes!
Which takes you to 34 forgives and 4 not.
Brilliant.
If you want to get something off your chest, you email confessions@bbc.co.uk. And if you made it to the end of the last podcast, you had to tweet Michael Palin's buttocks. Thanks to Joe, Jeannie, Peter Mills, Helen, and all the others that did just that. This week's code phrase is drenched by blind man's bottom. I mean, obviously it was going to do that. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for downloading. Don't forget, you can hear the whole of our radio show every weekday from 5 on BBC Radio 2. I can't find a jazz thing, but would you accept ID Christmas Trad?
Go on then.
Hey, thanks for listening. Love you too.